Hello, my name is Samantha. Today I will be responding to that person by describing Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18. This is also known as the Necessary and Proper Clause or the Elastic Clause. I will be sharing my insight on its meaning, importance, and impact on our daily lives. I will also point out some of the different ideas people might have on it and what they think it means best. My provision is called the Necessary and Proper Clause because it gives Congress the power to make any laws it deems necessary and proper in order to carry out its job. It is also called the Elastic Clause because it stretches the powers of Congress. This provision is important because it allows Congress to make all laws necessary and proper for carrying into execution foregoing powers, and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States, and all other department or officer thereof. The powers that are given to Congress by this clause aren't directly listed in the Constitution, therefore they are implied. They are used to uphold the powers that are directly listed in the Constitution, which are expressed or enumerated powers. Some examples of enumerated powers are the power to declare war, coin money, or to borrow money in the credit of the United States. One example of how this clause might be used is that Congress can hire millions of people to work in the Defense Department. This isn't directly listed in the Constitution, but it is allowed because it is used to uphold the express power to support the armed forces. This provision is important to me because it has shown me how vast and extensive Congress's power is or can be. There are many enumerated powers listed in the Constitution, so if required and appropriate, Congress can make many new implementations into our daily lives to sustain the laws in the United States and how it runs. This provision is also important to me because it has allowed me to learn some of the powers of the legislative branch and how Congress has been able to uphold the fair and just use of these implied powers, although there are many interpretations of them and they vary in many ways.
Hello, my name is Samantha, and I will be interviewing my dad, Samuel, in regards to the Necessary and Proper Clause. Have you ever heard of a clause in the Constitution called the Necessary and Proper Clause, also known as the Elastic Clause?
Isn't there one that gives a certain flexibility to Congress, like to make new laws, something like that?
Yeah. Well, basically, the Elastic Clause is found in the first article of the Constitution, and it gives Congress the power to make any laws it sees fit to carry out its job. Although these powers aren't directly listed in the Constitution, they are used to uphold the laws that are directly listed in the Constitution, such as the power to coin money, to declare war, or establish offices and roads.
Oh, I see. So does that mean that they can just make more bills if they see fit to do it?
Well, they have to make sure that they use it properly because they have to make sure it doesn't upset the economy or like the stock markets. So the power that they use has to be constitutional.
Alright, and let me ask you something else. Doesn't the other two branches, like the executive branch and the judicial branch, have anything to say to this?
Well, there's a system called checks and balances in which the two other branches can check to make sure that the Congress is using its power correctly. If they try to use that power to pass a new bill or a new law, the judicial branch, which is the Supreme Court, they can check to see if it gets passed, and the executive power, which is from the president, can veto a bill, so he can just deny and say that shouldn't be passed. Well, thank you for your time, and I hope we've been able to learn something more about Congress and the way our government works.
Well, it was really interesting because I never thought in detail about this law, so it's good to know. Thank you.
In order to be an appropriate exercise of the Necessary and Power Clause, Congress there has to be A, appropriate, 2, quote, plainly adopted to the end that it's supposed to serve, 3, not prohibited, and 4, consistent with the letter and spirit of the Constitution.
There is very little that the federal government lacks constitutional power to do if it employs its grants of powers carefully, properly, ingeniously and to full
The
effect.
necessary and proper clause was not an additional freestanding grant of power, but merely made explicit what was already implicit in the grant of each enumerated power. In short, quote, this clause only enables them to carry into execution the powers given to them. It gives them no additional power. There, opponents of the Constitution pointed to this power as evidence that the national government had virtually unlimited and undefined powers. It's they who dubbed it the sweeping clause.
Essentially, this CSPAN video clip is an accumulation of the different ideas and points of view of Seth Waxman, a law firm partner, Michael Polson, a law professor in Minnesota, and Randy Barnett, a law school professor in Boston. Each of these explained their stance on the necessary and proper clause, what they thought was the original meaning of it, and its intent on usage. In conclusion, the elastic clause is very important in the legislative branch, but it is still viewed differently among different people. Some believe it has been used fairly, but others believe it gives a lot of power in governing issues in our daily lives, and that it might even give too much power to Congress. However, the checks and balances system has worked to prevent that and has been effective so far. As long as the other branches continue to check the distribution of power in the legislative branch, and the two houses of Congress work together on debatable bills or issues, the necessary and proper clause is very beneficial to our government and our nation. Thank you, and I hope we've been able to learn something new about Congress and how our nation works.